The first witness of the day was a parenting supervisor. On May 22nd, so this is just a couple of days before the crime, there was a scheduled visit with the kids at Jennifer's house. When the supervisor arrived, the children were in the driveway playing basketball. She didn't see Fotis there until he pulled up in his Suburban. Later in her testimony, it came out that she learned he had in fact been there an hour early. Just as the nanny testified to, Fotis brought food, candy, and cake. The visit was supposed to be 3 hours. The rules were that the supervisor had to have Fotis within her sight and within earshot at all times. The interaction between Fotis and Jennifer was described as amicable, but they did not touch each other in any way. Fotis and the kids played basketball at Grace Farms. Returned to Jennifer's at approximately 6:20 p.m., Fotis and the kids sat at the picnic table in the yard. Fotis did not enter the house during this visit. Jennifer did not bring the cake outside for them. After dinner, the kids cleaned up the dishes. This witness saw Fotis leave close to 7:40 p.m. Fotis never entered the house or the garage. During cross, the defense essentially made the witness repeat the information about Fotis handing over the cake and Jennifer eating a piece of Easter bunny that Fotis broke off for her. He's going to use this later, and he wants to make sure that the jury heard it. This went on and on. It was so bad, in fact, that the judge at one point interjected and said, "Look, counsel is not objecting, but I want to know where this is. Are you going somewhere with this?" And he says, oh, yes. You know where he was going with it. He just wants the jury to hear it over and over because later he's going to use this. So he wants them to remember. This is what I'm thinking. This cake box theory. Interestingly, it was the defense who offered the witness's report as an exhibit. What do you want to bet? He's going to use this bit about Fotis handing Jennifer this cake box. On redirect, the prosecutor brought out the fact that Fotis had arrived at the hour early and then left before the supervisor arrived. So that was pretty much the end of that testimony. It was long and drawn out, I think unnecessarily, but I understand what the defense is doing. The next witness is a forensic scientist who works at the lab. They talked about the shirt that they found, talked about the area of damage on the shirt, and it was from the neck to the bottom. So it looks like the shirt was cut off of her. And it was the same with the bra. On both of these items, confirmatory tests were done for blood. Remember the knotted garbage bags? At the lab, they unknotted the bag to swab the interior part of the knot. Because while the knot is tied, whatever's under there is protected. So they might be able to get some DNA from there. Inside the bag, they found a panty liner. So they kept that and they tested that too. The lab examined a number of items from Jennifer's house. They went through them one by one and the process for how they were tested and on and on. And remember that white shirt that they found in the garbage, that white t-shirt that was covered with blood-like stains? It was determined that that shirt had nothing to do with this case. Remember the plates altered with the tape? She swabbed on the plate under the tape in an effort to obtain DNA that would have been protected by that layer of tape. And then that Tacoma. She swabbed the plates and the screws and did not get any biological material from the screws. Now that door panel they seized. Remember this from the Tacoma. This was the passenger side door. She took this apart further, even removing the switches to get into areas that would be difficult for even a detailer to clean. She described how she used a different test other than the Kastle-Meyer. So it's still a presumptive test, but it's much more sensitive. And they don't like to use this one because it's carcinogenic. And so they have to have equipment and vents and all of this. But because she knew this vehicle had been cleaned, she decided to use this particular more sensitive test. With the test they used, they can tell if the result reaction is due to a cleaning product. Several areas tested positive for blood. This is the passenger door of the Tacoma. To me, this was the biggest piece of evidence today. It looks like somebody was in the passenger side of that Tacoma. Now, we don't know yet whose blood it was. And hey, it could be somebody else's blood from before and have nothing to do with it. Could it have been that an injured Jennifer was in that passenger seat? Could it have been an accomplice in the passenger seat? Or is there another explanation? To me, this is a significant piece of evidence with huge implications possibly. We'll have to hear more before concluding anything though. They collected trace evidence and did more swabs for DNA. Remember the clear plastic bag that was cut out to look like a poncho? It tested positive for blood. The other poncho, the one with the hood, also tested positive. The zip ties tested positive for blood. The towel was positive for blood. And they wanted to collect trace material from it. You know those towels, they can, even when they come out of the dryer, sometimes they can have hairs on them. Remember the bags that had been taped together? And the tape had Fotis's fingerprints on the adhesive side? Well, the tape was tested for DNA as well. The bags themselves tested positive for blood in multiple spots. Inside one of those bags, there was a folded, unused garbage bag, also stained with blood. The item previously described as a razor blade is now being called a scraper. The blade and handle tested negative for blood. Are you waiting to find out whose DNA, whose blood? I understand. They're not there yet. They have to set out the process and who did what in the investigation and show that everything was done properly. Just because it's amusing, and I figure everybody could do with some amusement, I want to show you a clip of how it can be frustrating for an expert to be questioned by a non-expert. And this kind of frustration holds true in other situations between experts and non-experts as well.
And the cargo area rear seat controls, again, you did a screen for touch. Is that right?
No, we don't have a screening test for touch.
Oh, so you just create the sample to pass on to DNA? Is that what you do?
There is nothing that would, I'm not sure I understand your question, because these are all NAs. These three submissions are touch, and we don't have a test for touch in forensic biology.
On cross, the defense presented the witness's notes as an actual exhibit. He went through the notes, asking what everything meant and why they do or don't do things. He brought out the fact that because this particular forensic scientist used to work in DNA, that she has a good understanding of what samples would be most likely to yield a result, and therefore she would be better equipped to choose which samples to send along for DNA. This caught my attention. It makes me think that maybe they didn't find Michelle's DNA, and that they'll want to point out that if it was there, it would have been found. This is a total guess on my part. Nobody said that. I don't know. It's just a thought I had when I heard this exchange. The defense asked the witness if she was pressured to complete this case faster. Her answer was, well, not faster, but she was told by her director that this case should be the focus of her work. Basically, all other cases were to be put aside to work on this case. The defense crossed on presumptive tests for blood and why they didn't do confirmatory tests for blood on everything. This has been explained previously in this trial and previously by this witness. But she explained it again. If they destroy or take away from the sample in order to test for blood, they may not have enough left to test for DNA. And a DNA result would provide more individualized information. He's hung up on the blood-like stains. Let me just throw in a reminder at this point that the stains on that striped shirt and the bra were confirmed as blood. And they got Fotis' fingerprints from the adhesive side of that tape. Jennifer was killed. She's not hiding somewhere. And Fotis is all over this. The defense brought out that the term blood-like stains used in this witness's notes were in quotation marks in her notes. The reason they're in quotation marks in her notes is because that's not how she would refer to them, but it is how the police submitted the information. This is not her term. And this is another cue in respect to tunnel vision. Do you think the jury realizes that? I want to know. To me, it's staring me in the face. But my perception is different because I worked in the field. Let me know if it was obvious to you or not, and whether or not you think it's going to be obvious to the jury. The defense didn't finish the cross. It went on so long, there was no more time. So the cross-exam will continue tomorrow. That's all I've got for you today. Trust your gut. See you in the comments.